Deja vu or something more sinister? This just happened and I'm freaked out? So, this just happened about an hour ago, and I need to share it because it's seriously freaking me out. For context, I've never really believed in paranormal stuff or anything, but I don't know how else to explain what just happened. I was sitting in my living room, working on my laptop, when I got a craving for some tea. I walked to the kitchen, boiled some water, and grabbed a tea bag from the pantry. As I was waiting for the water to boil, I had this intense feeling of déjà vu. You know, that feeling where you're sure you've experienced the exact same thing before. But here's where it gets really disturbing. As I was pouring the hot water into my mug, my roommate Mark walked in, looking pale as a ghost. He stared at me, eyes wide, and said, "What the hell? You were just here." I laughed it off, thinking he was just messing with me, but he grabbed my arm, his grip ice cold. "No, you don't get it. I saw you 10 minutes ago. You walked in here, made tea, and then you looked at me and said, 'It's happening again.'" I felt a chill run down my spine. I hadn't said anything like that. I told him he must be mistaken, but he insisted. He described everything perfectly, down to the tea bag I was using and the way I was stirring the tea. Trying to shake off the unease, I went back to the living room with my mug. As I sat down, I glanced at my laptop screen and froze. The document I had been working on had a new line of text I didn't write. It said, "It's happening again." I called Mark over, and when he saw the screen, his face turned even whiter. We both knew I hadn't written that. I closed the laptop, and we sat in silence for a few minutes, trying to process what just happened. Then, the silence was broken by a faint whisper. It sounded like it came from the kitchen. Mark and I looked at each other, too scared to move. The whispering continued, getting louder, but we couldn't make out the words. Finally, I gathered the courage to walk back to the kitchen. The teapot was whistling, even though I had already used the water. The same mug with the same tea bag was sitting on the counter, untouched. Next to it, a note in my handwriting read, "Don't let it happen again." Mark and I packed some things and left the apartment immediately. We're staying at a friend's place now, but I can't shake this feeling of being watched. Has anyone else experienced something like this? What could it be? Glitch in the Matrix? Time slip? Something more sinister? I'm honestly at a loss here. TL, doctor, experienced intense deja vu while making tea, but my roommate insists he saw me do the exact same thing 10 minutes before I actually did it. Found a note in my handwriting that I didn't write. Now we're both freaked out. What just happened? Update. Hey everyone, I posted a few days ago about a creepy deja vu experience that both my roommate Mark and I had. Your responses and theories were both comforting and disturbing. I wanted to give you an update because things have only gotten stranger. After leaving our apartment and staying at a friend's place for a couple of nights, we decided to go back to our apartment yesterday to pick up more of our stuff. We were still pretty freaked out, but we couldn't just abandon all our things. When we walked in, the first thing we noticed was that the apartment was colder than usual, even though it's the middle of summer. As we were packing up our clothes, Mark found another note, this time on his pillow. It said, "You can't leave." It was in my handwriting again, but I swear I didn't write it. Mark believes me because he was with me the entire time since we left. We decided to check the kitchen again, where the whole thing started. The mug with the tea bag was still there, cold and untouched since the last time. But this time, there was another note inside the mug. It read, "It's not over." At this point, we were both terrified, but we wanted to understand what was happening. We set up a camera in the kitchen and left it recording while we went back to the living room. About an hour later, we heard the whispering again, this time louder and more distinct. It was coming from the kitchen. We slowly walked back and found the teapot whistling again, even though we hadn't touched it. We checked the footage, and what we saw still haunts me. The video showed me walking into the kitchen, making tea, and then staring directly into the camera with a look of absolute terror before saying, "It's happening again." The thing is, I never went into the kitchen while the camera was recording. I was with Mark the whole time in the living room. We decided we couldn't stay there any longer. We grabbed the essentials and left immediately. We've been staying at a different friend's place, trying to figure out our next steps. I've done some research, and while there are plenty of theories, time loops, parallel universes, hauntings, I still don't have a concrete answer. Mark and I are considering bringing in a paranormal investigator, but we're also thinking about just moving out for good and breaking our lease. If anyone has any idea what might be going on, or if you've experienced something similar, please let me know. We're desperate for answers and a way to stop whatever this is. TL. DR. Went back to the apartment, found more creepy notes in my handwriting, captured footage of me doing things I never did, and heard whispering. We're still freaked out and need answers. What is happening? Update 2. Hey everyone, it's been a roller coaster since my last update, and I have some final news to share. First, I want to thank everyone who offered advice and support. This will be my last update on this situation because I think we've reached the end of whatever this bizarre ordeal was. After our last post, we took the advice of many commenters and reached out to a paranormal investigator named Sarah. She came highly recommended and had dealt with similar cases before. She agreed to come to our apartment the next evening to investigate. When Sarah arrived, she immediately felt that something was off. She spent some time walking through the apartment, sensing the energy in each room. In the kitchen, where most of the strange events occurred, she paused and told us that she felt a strong presence. Sarah set up some equipment, EMF meters, audio recorders, and a few cameras. She also brought some items for a cleansing ritual. As she started the ritual, the atmosphere in the apartment changed. It felt like the air was thickening and a low hum began resonating through the walls. Suddenly, the whispering started again, but this time it was louder and clearer. We could make out the words, "Help me," trapped over and over. The voice sounded desperate and tormented. Sarah continued her ritual, chanting softly, and asked the spirit to show itself. Then something happened that none of us could explain. The room temperature plummeted and a shadowy figure appeared in the corner of the kitchen. It looked like a distorted version of me, the same one Mark described seeing before. It mouthed the words, "It's happening again," before disappearing into thin air. Sarah finished the ritual and the air seemed to lighten immediately. She explained that she believed our apartment was caught in some kind of time loop or echo, possibly tied to a tragic event that happened there years ago. The spirit was a past tenant who had experienced something traumatic, causing a residual haunting that manifested as these glitches. We did some research and discovered that about 10 years ago, a tenant named James lived in our apartment. He had a breakdown and went missing, never to be found. His last known action, according to neighbors, was repeatedly making tea in the middle of the night, muttering, "It's happening again." Sarah advised us to move out, as the residual energy was strong and might not be fully cleared. We took her advice seriously and have since found a new place. We broke our lease and explained the situation to our landlord, who surprisingly didn't seem shocked. He refunded part of our deposit, and we left without looking back. Since moving, we haven't experienced any more strange occurrences. Mark and I are finally able to sleep peacefully again. I don't know if we'll ever fully understand what happened, but I'm grateful that it's over. Thank you to everyone who followed our story and offered help. Stay safe, and if you ever feel like you're experiencing something similar, trust your instincts and seek help. TL. Doctor brought in a paranormal investigator who performed a cleansing ritual. Discovered our apartment was haunted by a past tenant caught in a time loop. Moved out, and the strange occurrences have stopped, finally at peace.